Tonight on 48 Hours, Alaska. Wild, beautiful, and wounded.
Just about every day we've seen something die out here.
It's not just the oil on the body itself, but it's the food that they're ingesting.
Oh, God. It's a heck of a mess. This is not something we're proud of.
A cleanup that may never be complete.
We know how to clean up the oil. It's getting the equipment out here to do it on this scale. You can't have a fishery in this kind of stuff.
We're talking about people losing their livelihoods. We've got kids.
This is far from the Alaskan dream I grew up with.
A residue of doubt over Big Oil's future.
The Arctic is a very, very unforgiving place. There are no second chances here.
The fight for America's last frontier.
What we've done is put man's footprint on the face of God.
It's 4 months now since the Exxon Valdez ran aground in Prince William Sound, spilling a record 11 million gallons of crude oil, a deadly assault on the majestic Alaskan shoreline. Hopes for a fast and thorough cleanup have long since faded, today replaced by fears of slow death to wildlife and threats to the future of oil exploration. The damage stretches along at least 700 miles of coastline, and the debate has moved 800 miles away to Alaska's North Slope. A new battle over two great American resources, untapped oil and unspoiled wilderness. As the first weeks of summer came to Alaska, so did 48 Hours.
The Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. On Alaska's North Slope. Summer. For thousands of years, the rhythms of life here have not changed. A new generation of caribou is born on the coastal plain. Then, driven by mosquitoes, the animals gather to form the porcupine caribou herd, 180,000 strong.
It's probably one of the most well-known natural resources in the world. You want the sleeping bags all the way in the back there? Yeah.
Steve Fancy, biologist for U.S. Fish and Wildlife.
I've been specializing in caribou for 10 years now. Year-round, I do nothing but do research on the porcupine caribou herd.
Fancy is part of a team conducting a census of the herd.
We're trying to understand why the caribou use this particular part of the coastal plain. Make sure that either human or natural events don't decimate the herds.
It's no longer academic. Oil development may come to the tundra. Congress will decide.
Do you have any idea what the effect of pipelines and roads and things like that would have?
There undoubtedly will be some environmental damage on any development of this scale that's possible here.
Ken Witten, biologist for the state of Alaska.
It's hard for us to predict just how bad those effects would be.
Big bull in front of the lens now.
Cows?
88 cows, 38 calves,
Our job is to do research,
14 yearlings.
to be very objective. You got some other big groups crossing the river here. So it's hard to get a good balance because you've got groups on different sides of this controversy trying to convince people that they're right.
We have one extreme point of view that the potential oil wealth here is worth any environmental cost. And then the other extreme, we have people who are trying to protect the wilderness aspects of this area. So they want us to say that it would also destroy the wildlife. So we often are really caught in the middle.
Exxon 1, this is Operation Support Stillings. Come in, please. Okay, what time are your crews going to work this morning?
Any new ideas, experiments?
But again, this is another shore where we can really use some mechanical type of help.
Exxon's Bill Stillings, a field marshal with an enemy that fights dirty.
It's a heck of a mess. This is not something we're proud of.
His orders? Deploy thousands of people and millions of dollars in equipment to clean up the filthiest beaches in Prince William Sound.
Yeah, they're still getting a lot of oil out of those areas.
Months after the spill, he's still not certain where the enemy will strike next.
We're going to go ahead and sign these off as hand cleaning only.
In the thick of a war that may never be won.
I mean, the scope of this thing is so large. The area we're dealing in is such a large area that it's hard to show 10,000 people working here to clean this thing up.
Right, everybody, just finish up what we're doing.
We're going to be here for a little while, I believe. This is one of the worst ones I've seen so far.
Sandy Green is a cleanup worker. She has just landed on Latouche Island on the southern end of Prince William Sound.
Sometimes I think about home, and sometimes I think about how yucky it is.
This oil has festered for weeks.
Oh, God. Little seaweed salad.
It's sticky, it's stubborn,
Kind of sick to my stomach right now.
and it's dangerous.
You try not to get daydreaming, because if you do, then you're liable to hurt somebody, because you get twisted ankles and broken bones and stuff.
Yeah. Hi, guy. Snuck in behind me. Good. How are you, Homer?
Good.
What do you think?
Yeah, copy. Yeah, go ahead. Mess.
Well, these are the Omni barges with the booms that can extend out.
Boom is the heavy tubing laid out to keep the oil contained. But Stillings has bigger guns to fire at the oil that's choking Latouche.
We're using an oil field truck that's designed to take oil out of a pipeline, reheat it and put it back into the pipeline, and we're using it to heat salt water. I think we know how to do it. We know how to clean up the oil. It's getting the equipment out here to do it on this scale.
The yellow girl.
Really got grungy up here.
But not all cleanup crews are equal.
Heaviest equipment we run is a shovel.
Peter Gagney works for Exxon too. He's on a small cleanup crew outside Prince William Sound, 200 miles southwest of the site of the Valdez spill. They call this place Grungy Bay. You're a long way from Prince William Sound here. You don't have the kind of steam equipment and hot water equipment and all that stuff out here?
Right, no, none at all. None of it's even been tried over here.
Okay, keep it going.
It's been very inconsistent. We've been pulled off of here, what we'll call mysteriously, 4 times.
Just told you to stop work on this beach?
Yeah, stop work on the beach.
Declaring it clean, or?
No, just not giving us reasons why we were pulled off. This beach has been controversial from the very beginning because of the type of beach it is, which is generally hidden, and the oil come in here, and it's out of sight, so it was out of mind until somebody found it.
Doug Hume is working nearby.
Most of these areas are spawning areas for pink salmon.
You found oil back here?
Lots of it, yeah.
You're not supposed to clean it up, though?
No.
Why not?
It's above the high tide line. They don't tell me why, they just tell me what to do. The adult fish should be coming back in any time now, and they'll be laying their eggs in in the oil.
But Exxon has told you, don't clean it up.
Yep. But I did.
Exxon supervisors say harsh weather frequently forces them to move cleanup crews out of this area. Environmental concerns, they say, restrict what cleaning methods they can use.
Does Marco have a tide book there with him? Could he tell me whether tomorrow's tide is going to be any higher than today's?
At a place called Windy Bay, Mike Brooks works on a crew that used to number 28. Now, he's one of only 9.
It's hard to deal with the blizzard of directives that come down from all these different groups. It would be much easier if just one guy was calling the shots.
I think Exxon's trying to clean it up. As you see, there's a lot of Exxon people out here. And they come along and they're always kicking over rocks and looking at it. We're moving oil today. I would have come out even if it wasn't $16 an hour. You know, I've worked in the canneries before, which is a big industry up here too, and they don't pay anywhere near this.
You want to see a clean beach or one that's in progress right now?
We would like to see one that has been cleaned.
One that has been cleaned?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll get back to you on that.
Looks good, huh?
Yeah, they did a really good job on this beach. You can still see a little bit of it.
Yeah, there's some there, but
it's not very significant.
But not very. I wouldn't say it's very significant at this point.
Yeah, we were.
But for a heavily oiled beach, yeah, we can see some stain. Some of this on the lower rocks is the oil staining.
Have you got a definition of clean? Your definition of clean? Is it the top being clean? Is it?
Well, I think it's environmentally clean is my definition. Aesthetically, you know, there's going to be some staining on some of the shorelines.
Do you want to make a guess how many barrels we got today, all together?
I think we got 6.
6? I'll say 8.
6 and 7/8. This is skimmer 2.
Yeah, go ahead.
I give it about 30 barrels.
30 for the day?
So far, that's the whole day, about 30, 32 barrels.
Thank you
We
very
are
much.
way off. I can't believe it.
30 to 32 barrels?
30 to 32 barrels.
Great. Wow. I know. This is great. That calls for celebration, huh? 30 barrels out of...
30 barrels out of 99 million.
All finished and time to go home, huh?
And I'll guarantee you that as long as I work with this company, if there's more that needs to be done next year, we'll do it.
This is my home. Jesus, the up the country I live in. I'm 46 years old, I've got tears in my eyes. I used to walk on the beaches down here when I had my first little boat. You could sit down and watch the otters swim. They're gone. Not even the snails that used to be in the rocks are alive anymore. I'm sorry, but I'd like to go for a walk now. Just remember, it could be your backyard next time. And I hope it isn't, because once in a lifetime is more than any of us want.
Alaska's Brooks Range, the backbone of the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge.
Just like the Grand Canyon, you can talk about it forever, but you have to be here to understand what it's all about and why this place is considered by just about everybody who sees it as one of the grandest wildernesses on the planet.
Rex Blazer is director of the Northern Alaska Environmental Center.
You can see this little draw to the right of the creek, right. Because that's probably easier walking.
A hiker, Blazer invited us to these mountains overlooking the plain where Big Oil hopes to make Alaska's next big strike.
Chamberlain is looking pretty scenic this morning. It's my favorite hike in this river valley.
There's flowers out now. I was surprised by that.
Oh, there are an amazing amount of wildflowers that come out here for a few brief weeks. It's really quite a sight.
If Alaska's congressional delegation, its congressmen, its senators are basically in favor of drilling up here, why are we fighting it?
This is a national resource, and it's a national wildlife refuge. It's held in the public trust for all the people of the United States, and so it's a national debate. I work for an environmental group, and I make compromises sometimes every day, but this is one area we're not going to compromise on.
This evening, Blazer joins 9 backpackers and their guide.
Oh, Rex, how's it going?
Looks like we're all in the same place at the same time,
we
finally.
meet up. Yeah.
Then together, they will float a river gorge from the mountains to the Arctic coastal plain.
We got a little section of hula hula whitewater coming up.
Doug Blakowski captains one of the river rafts.
I'm from Alaska. I grew up here.
Yeehaw, there we go.
I worked on the pipeline.
Roller coaster.
At the time I was 18, it was the second job I had in my life. I was making $90,000 a year.
I just think the wilderness is worth more than wages, than personal wages.
Now we're going to get a little water.
That's what it's all about. Splashy white water, the boat's full of water, everybody having a good time.
The off ice is almost like a glacier in that it's permanent. In the spring during breakup, the river actually cuts its way through the off ice, carves a canyon through it.
Forward.
And the off ice remains, sometimes for years.
Now we're leaving the beautiful mountains behind and entering the Arctic coastal plain. Let's paddle forward. More or less, the journey is complete.
"60 miles west of the Arctic Refuge, at Alaska's Prudhoe Bay, the mother lode of oil is slowly draining out.
You have what they call blowout preventers, which are big valves, big taps.
Roger Herrera from British Petroleum is playing host to Congressman Chet Atkins and Steve Solars. They've come here in preparation for the vote that will decide the future of Arctic oil, to open or close the refuge, ANWR, for development.
Is there any problem with seawater spills as opposed to oil spills?
Well, British Petroleum is the operator of Prudhoe Bay's sparkling Endicott field.
We wanted them to see Endicott because it's sort of state-of-the-art of the technology of producing oil in the Arctic. It gives you the best idea that we have as to the nature of a production scenario on the coastal plain of ANWR.
But there is a dark side to oil production on Alaska's North Slope. It's a town called Deadhorse, less than 10 miles from the Endicott field. For 20 years, it's been the base camp for companies servicing big oil, now littered with abandoned buildings, equipment, and barrels of toxic waste.
Ooh, that doesn't look good at all, does it?
This is Thor Cutler's week to be Alaska's watchdog on the North Slope.
Certainly this is a movement of the chemicals off the gravel pad and into the tundra where it's dead out here. This tundra is dead. Essentially, it's not coming back.
Could it never come back? Or will it come back?
Not in our lifetime. It looks like we stirred up a little activity like a little house cleaning.
You think this is not a coincidence that they happen to be cleaning up
No, this
right after we
isn't.
drive?
Well, I've never seen this activity before. Turns my stomach. This is far from the Alaskan dream I grew up with.
Today, it's the congressman's turn to see the ANWR, Congressman Solars.
What's your impression? What's your first impressions of?
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Magnificent.
It was on the summit of a windy mesa that a debate ensued, including the Audubon Society's Dave Klein, Congressman Atkins, and BP's Roger Herrera.
I mean, what we see at Prudhoe Bay was the learning experience. I mean, that's behind us. We're not going to do that again.
The problem is that we'll take a part of the planet, one of the only remaining parts of the planet that's still pristine, and irrevocably change it, to me that's like going through the Metropolitan Museum of Art with a razor blade.
I think we can do creative things in the environment. We don't have to spoil it.
I've been here 18 years, and I've heard reassurance after reassurance after reassurance. We're going to do better. Trust us. We're going to use state-of-the-art technology and safety practices. And then something like the Exxon Valdez comes along and just destroys our confidence in this.
For Roger Herrera, Congressman Solars and Atkins were tough sells.
They're both from the northeast part of the United States of America, where they haven't done a very good job of protecting their environment. So this is their chance of sort of absolving themselves, if you like. It's the only area left in North America which has the potential of harboring giant oil fields. And nationally, by the time we could develop such giant oil fields, we will be in desperate need of the oil from there.
The Arctic is a very, very unforgiving place. There are no second chances here. Now the oil industry is asking to have a second chance to drill in the Anwar, and I think the response to that is, in the Arctic there are no second chances.
Kodiak Island, the #1 fishing port in the United States. The fishermen are tuned in to Peggy's weather forecast, expecting important news.
There will be a salmon announcement for Kodiak fishermen after the weather tonight.
The salmon season has already been postponed once. It's frustrating for Tom Dooley and all the other fishermen. They are rigged and ready to go. 14 million salmon are starting the run, yet they are seemingly caught in a catch-22.
If we go fishing, we're going to make some money, maybe the first day. But guys are going to contaminate their nets, their boats. They're going to get fish that's contaminated.
Prince William Sound is about 400 miles north of here. When the Exxon Valdez oil spill occurred last March, there were worries here on Kodiak Island that the richest harvest of the year, the salmon season, would be in jeopardy. And sure enough, those worst fears have come true.
Right there. It's what they refer to as mousse. It's the oil after a lot of the hydrocarbons have evaporated off. Pretty sad affair.
34-year-old Doug Hodel catches about 50,000 salmon a year.
You can't have a fishery in this kind of stuff.
But since the 1st of May, Doug's boat has been leased by the State Fish and Game Division to test fish for oil contamination. Instead of just netting salmon, he now catches moose pies.
If you got a chunk of that in your net, forget it. It'd like be taking a hole right through your net. You'd like rats. You got killer whales coming. Salmon season's in full swing when you see those. Go ahead and throw it over here. Gonna look at the fish, look for any visual signs of oil or contaminants on it.
Dave Gilliland is a state biologist aboard the test boat.
Give it a whiff. Is one of the, look in the gills. There's nothing there.
No, so it's all clean?
Yep.
No oil?
It's clean.
But a mile or so away, another patch of debris.
You got it on both sides of the boat.
Oh my God, look at this one.
It's amazing that coming that far from Valdez, huh?
Does that have feathers?
No, that's duck feathers.
Duck feathers in there.
This is what these ducks look like when they come up with this. It looks like a big clump of oil.
This whole area here is covered with this. Look at it.
Yeah. We fish salmon right there when the season's normally open, yeah. Sad affair.
Back in Kodiak Harbor, Peggy's promised salmon season announcement is about to come. Tom Dooley is pessimistic.
Better beer?
Better beer.
I bet they don't open it.
They don't?
Yeah. There we go. Announcement. You owe me a beer. Until further notice.
Wow. Oh, man. Smart move.
Yeah.
That is a smart move.
I agree with him. I definitely believe that we shouldn't fish. Not until they can make sure that we can catch fish without being contaminated.
So, what's going through your heart and mind right now?
Well, the main thing is I'm glad I got this boat paid for. There's a lot of guys in this harbor that's got big bills and big boat payments, and they're a lot worse shape than I am. If you don't make your payments, they take your boat.
Boats catch fish to make their payments. You've shut the whole Kodiak salmon fishery down.
Now, what angers the fishermen is that compensation from Exxon may be their only hope for survival.
I can't make it right now because your island dumped this black oily crap all over our beaches, okay? Now, what am I supposed to do? File a claim in September? They'll take my boat back by then. I will lose my boat. We're talking about people losing their livelihoods. We've got kids, mouths to feed.
Still hitting out there.
Just to the west of Kodiak Island is Bristol Bay, protected from the Exxon oil by the Alaskan Peninsula. This is the largest salmon run in the world, and Ryder Solberg has been fishing here for 23 years.
God, that's a beauty.
You have a run this year of sockeye alone that's 40 million fish. That is going to be worth to the fishermen $400 million. The possibility of generating that kind of money, it gets crazy.
But now there is a new competitor for the resources here, the oil companies. Bristol Bay is also the home of site number 92, a proposed location for offshore drilling.
An oil spill at the wrong period of time could decimate what is, again, the largest red salmon run in the world and one of the major natural resources and wonders of the world.
Former Governor Jay Hammond also fishes in Bristol Bay. The people here no longer have any faith in the oil companies?
Well, let me say it's been shaken. It's amazing to me how they went from, the angels of economics to the demons, you might say, of destruction. It virtually occurred overnight with that Valdez oil spill. And now virtually all Alaskans, I think, are opposed to leasing development in Bristol Bay. And of course, if from that event we are to recognize that certain areas should be off limit, it will not have been for naught.
It's a wonderful, wonderful industry. It's a unique lifestyle. And I have a 2-year-old boy, and I want desperately for him to have the opportunity to fish with me up here and to carry on. And it is. It's gone for 110 years, and I want to see it go for another 110.
Team continues. We have some sort of bad news there.
In the offices of Valdez, an oil spill bureaucracy is booming. Exxon meetings.
Nobody is ahead of schedule.
Environmental meetings.
There has been oil sighted just above this point, but
Coast Guard meetings.
But the public confidence that the job was being done well was never there.
When Governor Steve Cooper goes to a meeting, it's no wonder he hears,
"There's never been any perception from anybody that there's been one person in charge, and everybody wants somebody to really be in charge."
Since the first day of the spill, the governor has threatened to take over the cleanup, but never has.
Do you sometimes wish that on March 24th, when you went to Valdez the first time, you said...
I know what you're going to say, and I know what the answer is, yeah. Yeah, I wish it almost every day.
You wish you'd taken over from that day?
Yeah. But the problem with that, of course, is that the lawyers are all involved in this. And the lawyers tell me and tell everybody else, boy, if you go out there and take it over, then you can't get the money from Exxon. And so we're in this situation where a cleanup has to be done very quickly, and everybody's trying to dodge the liability.
The process, by its very nature, slows the progress to some extent.
Exxon Senior Vice President Terry Kuntz says Exxon is paying the bills, $600 million worth so far, but the company's not really in charge.
There are state agencies, there are federal agencies, there are native organizations, there are scientists. Exxon makes very, very few unilateral decisions in this whole activity. We simply do what the Coast Guard tells us must be done.
Now, have they washed this along here?
They washed some of this through here, and they did the island again here.
By order of President Bush,
I'm amazed at the number of,
Coast Guard Admiral Clyde Robbins was given the title Federal On-Scene Coordinator.
That's super!
Is he in charge?
That's not too bad. That means it's not coming up from down below. I don't have absolute control over what Exxon does or anybody else does. You have a number of agencies within the state and federal governments that have a very deep interest in what goes on here.
But Exxon needs the Admiral's signature whenever it starts cleaning a new beach.
It's a compromise when you go onto a beach, first of all. You want to be sure that you're not doing more damage than the oil has done. And the best way to handle that is to get it regimented in a way so that everybody understands what the ground rules are, and that takes a piece of paper.
Paperwork and committee rule may be the future of oil spill cleanup.
This doesn't show really any at all here.
Exxon scientists are trying to get permits from several different agencies to use what they say is the real future of cleanup, chemicals.
Right now, we have a solvent that will attack this tar. Now, how much good it does below the surface, we're not quite ready to tell.
They could go out there and we could use chemicals and we'd clean it up, but we would cause a heck of a lot more damage to the environment, possibly.
The crisis of the future may be this, a sea of oily waste. Everything from rags and rubber boots of cleanup crews to contaminated seaweed and dead animals. None of the spill agencies can agree what to do about it, and it's growing at a frightening rate.
It's coming in a lot faster than we can burn it, and that's not even a drop in the bucket. Burning on the average of about 20,000 pounds a day. For pathological burning, we have two flames shooting into this one. Turns everything pretty much to ashes a little bit quicker. Seabirds, otters, eagles, animals that happen to be in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Exxon wants to bring in more and bigger incinerators. Alaska's chief environmentalist, Dennis Kelso, is worried.
The problem, though, is that there may be toxic compounds produced in the course of burning this stuff. Some of the possibilities are production of dioxins, which is extremely toxic. What is it that is going to be acceptable to us? Who's going to bear that risk? Who's going to run the chance that an event like this could happen and disrupt a community or destroy a fishery or damage the economy of a whole region?
As the Exxon Valdez was towed away from Prince William Sound, it left behind a final trail of oil, and a state determined to watch the oil industry in the future as carefully as it's watching the cleanup today.
We want to have a relationship with that industry, we want to work with them, but we're not going to be passive and we're not going to just assume that they're going to be able to do what it is they say they will do. So yes, there has been a change.
Arctic Village, nestled between majestic mountains, located on the southern border of the Arctic Wildlife Refuge. A settlement for 150 Athabascan Indians. Chief Trimble Gilbert, his son Gregory, and grandson Virgil.
How many we've got there?
They are subsistence fishermen and hunters, living off the land.
Because we don't want our water contaminated. The land is pretty out there. We want to keep it the way it is. So that's what they call the last frontier. Should keep the way it is for the people, for the futures. Animals are very sensitive. So we're afraid we might lose the caribou if in case of development over there.
Why? Because the oil drilling and
yeah, right.
The push for oil development in the wildlife refuge, progress that could change the future of Arctic Village, is coming from the Eskimos, some 300 miles north in Barrow.
It's just a blessing to us to catch a whale for the community.
The people of Barrow are celebrating a successful whaling season with the traditional feast.
Polar bear meat. You just get overwhelmed by it all. I love it.
Since Arnold Brower was lucky enough to land one of 3 whales this spring, he must help prepare for the feast.
Yeah, this is the whale meat.
Why the festival? What's the tradition, the custom behind all of it?
Well, that's the whole thing, is the sharing to ensure that everybody has something to eat. So I think this helps keep the social activity and our custom alive.
The people of Barrow share another bounty, a modern way of life made possible by oil.
This is the new high school, by the way. This is all brand new. The gymnasium's off to the right.
How much that cost?
This whole complex, about 70 million.
Oliver Levitt is also a whaling captain.
The hospital complex is over here.
Money all came from where to build it?
From Crude Bay. It's a tax base. Because of oil.
Oliver Levitt is also vice president of the Arctic Slope Regional Corporation, a corporation with major holdings in businesses that support oil and gas exploration. So we're where? Right here.
Barrow's up here, Prudhoe Bay is over here.
And next to Prudhoe Bay is the Arctic Wildlife Refuge.
And we happen to own some land within the Wildlife Refuge, and we'd like an opportunity to be able to drill it. That's probably our #1 prospect.
But for Trimble Gilbert, down in Arctic Village, it is the caribou calving ground. Is this dinner for tonight?
Yeah. Cook it outside by the fire.
If the mosquitoes don't eat you up first. I Lance, these mosquitoes are the biggest things I've seen.
Yeah. And put some more fire in it.
Is this the kind of life that you think that you want for all your children and grandchildren?
Probably a good life here.
But if you had oil exploration and all that oil money coming in from up north, wouldn't that be good for Arctic Village?
No. Why? It's good for some people, but it's not good for some young people.
Why?
Whenever they get enough money, they just take off to the Fairbanks or city, spend all their money that way. A lot of people died with alcohol too when they get to other cities.
But you're telling me that you want to keep the people poor.
No, it's not.
Is that true?
We're not really poor. It's good life yet. I'm happy all the time. I'm never go hungry yet. I live out the land. I know how to live up here.
This is your land.
Yeah. This is our land, 1.8 million acre. We own. Every year, here we'll go over there and have a little one. We want that calving ground should be clean. Keep it the way it is for the future. And that's where all the oil, that's where they want to develop.
You're pointing off that direction, saying you want to drill in the wildlife refuge. And as you're pointing right back from the other direction is Trimble Gilbert, the Indians, who are saying, no, don't touch this area.
Well, we understand their view. It's the fear of the unknown. What's going to happen? That's exactly the same fear we had 20 years ago. We could have sat back and watched all this go by and ended up the same. We've come to this page and we can't turn the page back. It's the Western society has moved in terms of technology, and it's people like it up here because it's a much easier way of life.
I think it's better.
But do you worry about oil exploration?
Yeah, a lot. When all this oil passes away, that's what we got to think about. Will there be anything left for the next generation?
Let me get it down. Okay, back off. Okay, yeah, let go. Okay?
The oil, cleaned from its feathers, an eagle is released back into the Alaskan wilderness.
She looks good.
It is one triumph among losses too great to count. Biologists' best guess is that 250,000 birds alone may be killed. The continuing threat to wildlife of all kinds is barely understood, and only a few are even trying to measure it.
Is that him? Is that our boy? He's straight down. He's right on the bottom, right below us.
Windy Bay on the Gulf of Alaska, 200 miles from the scene of the spill. One hungry otter is stalked by two otter hunters.
He's right there. He's right underneath the net. You have one shot and one shot only. I don't know. This one, I think, is smart. He's still in fairly good shape. He's not real sick like you might find some of the sound animals that when they were first oiled. They were very easy. You could go up right alongside of them and pick them up with your hands and flip them into the boat. But
Jeff Foster is an animal behaviorist.
This area was hit very heavily with oil.
Bobby Kondopoulos, an Alaska fisherman.
They're going to ingest it. They're going to get it on their fur.
They're on the team that's made otters the most cared-for victims of the spill.
It's not just the oil on the body itself, but it's the food that they're ingesting. I don't know if you noticed, but he was eating mostly barnacles, it looked like, and a few mussels. You know, the food that they're eating in this area has been pretty well damaged by the oil. Okay, we want to keep these two together. Okay. Has real sharp teeth, Mark.
No longer are otters found soaked in a thick and heavy layer of crude oil as they were right after the spill.
They do have oil on them. You can see I'm picking some up on my hands.
But even a bit of oil can still do damage.
Oh, let go inside the boat, babe. It's a very delicate coat, and that's what keeps them warm. When that oil gets into it, even just a little bit, it starts breaking down the hair follicles, and the water starts seeping in. And actually, they'll get hypothermic and actually freeze to death at a point. She's pretty calm. They haven't really come up with a figure of how many animals have died, but I've heard anywhere from 7,500 to 10,000 animals, and that's a pretty good chunk of the population. One, two, three.
Months after the spill, little is known about the long-term impact. As they gather otters, the rescuers are also gathering information.
This one is 37 pounds. 37 pounds all teeth. Let's say 62 on that one. We weigh them 67 pounds. That's the top weight. That's the weight that they'd have in the wild.
Doesn't want a haircut.
Now, this guy doesn't want the trim.
What are you going to do with this sample?
Okay, this is we're saving for archives, and we're doing this just for future reference and for various tests and along the way. This one, it has quite a bit of oil on it. It's a little brown discoloration around the muzzle here, and plus the texture of the fur is broken down a bit. You guys been waiting long?
Next stop, the Otter Rescue Center in Seward, 100 miles away.
We've got a little hospital here that's working pretty good, and we can treat them for their toxicity.
To stop their biting, the otters are sedated.
We can obviously clean them up and get their fur rehabilitated.
Guard her eyes, just cup your hand over her nose.
What we're hoping to do is get them back into the wild.
Kirk Vasey has been helping clean up otters since just a few days after the spill.
My gut feeling is the only reason we were here from the beginning and financed by Exxon is for public relations. The whole lower 48 focused on the otter. It became a symbol for the spill. And the otter has that cuddle quotient.
But biologists are now wondering if the otters might do just as well if they didn't go through all this, if they were left alone in the wild. A study is underway to see if there is still any point in washing otters. The study could lead to a decision to close the otter hospital, but the hospital will be forced to close anyway when the Alaskan winter begins in late September. The hunters will stop searching. No one will be watching what happens.
Just about every day we've seen something die out here, and it's really, really sad.
Exxon also plans to stop the shoreline cleanup for the winter, less than 2 months from now. Exxon USA's president told Congress last week that more than 500 miles have been cleaned up. State officials say it's more like 150 miles and are urging Exxon to stay on the job. I'm Dan Rather. Until next week, that's 48 hours.
C stands for Comedy, Coming of Age, and the Kavanaughs. It's an hour of continuous craziness. Coming of Age right after the Kavanaughs next.